It's JC at Motorcycle Superstore, and it's time to talk about some pre-season bike prep and maintenance tips that every rider should be considering, whether you ride a dirt bike, adventure bike, street bike, or whatever. Now, the idea behind this is that you're going to take this into consideration before you actually get on the motorcycle. It's that time of year again. We want to get out and ride. The first thing we want to do is fire it up and take off. However, for safety's sake, let's do a little bit of checking around the bike and make sure it's in good working order. Now, the big caveat here, the disclaimer I have to say, always consult your owner's manual. That thing can really be your best friend. There's tons of information in there. If you have any questions, go back to that and use that as your sort of baseline. Also, if you're not into doing the maintenance, something's maybe over your head, you're not comfortable with it, or you have questions, find a trained mechanic, get a buddy or somebody who knows a little more than you do, but always err on the side of caution. Professional mechanics know what they're doing, so head that route if you need to. All right, so let's get right into it right now. We'll break down some of the basic areas. This applies, like I said, to all different types of bikes. So look at it, put it into your garage, and have a happy and safe riding season. Let's kick things off with tires because it's one of our favorite things to talk about. Whether you're on a dirt bike or street bike, this is what's controlling your motorcycle. It's what puts it in contact with the ground. They're absolutely paramount. So pay good attention to them. Now with this dirt bike tire, you're going to be looking at the tread first and foremost. So if you see rounded edges, if you see chunking on the tread like you see on this one, those are indicators that this tire has been worn out. You can see what the new one looks like. I obviously like to get as much value as I can on my tires. This one's ready to be replaced. Now on the street side of things, tread is just as important. So you're going to look for those chicken strips down the center. Any kind of uneven wear on the tread is going to indicate perhaps that it was over or underinflated. Now speaking of inflation, the air pressure is absolutely what's holding your motorcycle up, not the tire itself. So you're going to want to make sure that the pressures are set to the manufacturer's recommendation, either the motorcycle or the tire manufacturer. And once you do that, go ahead and check out your air system. So whether it's a tube or tubeless, you want to make sure that your valve stem is in good condition, and you want to make sure that you have a good valve cap on it so that it's not leaking air. Also, check out the sidewalls. Any kind of cuts or gashes, any sort of uneven wear there, that's a very susceptible area, particularly with off-road bikes. These things get beat up. The carcass can also come apart. So if you see big bulges or strange bubbles in your tire, steel belts are a major red flag. Anytime you see something that looks like the tire might be coming apart from the inside out, that's also a good sign you need to replace them. Now, go ahead and take a look while you're on the sidewall at the date stamp. In this example, it says 4613. That means it's the 46th week of 2013. That's when it was made. If you got a tire that looks okay, but it's maybe 10 years old, might want to replace it. So keep that in mind as well. Other than that, if you're an adventure guy, you're looking at all these things combined, there's really a lot going on with your tires. So make sure you pay close attention, and there is no tire that's greater or lesser than the other. So front and back need the same amount of love. Check them out. Make sure you got good treads underneath you, and you'll really appreciate it on the road. We can only go fast if we're able to slow down, so brakes are a critical component. The first thing you're going to want to do is just feel your levers. Give them a squeeze, press on the rear lever, and make sure everything feels normal. If they come all the way to the bar, obviously something's wrong. You're going to take a closer look. Now, assuming it's all pretty good, we're going to look at the fluid levels. So you're going to inspect to make sure that you have enough fluid in your reservoir. You're also going to want to make sure that it's a clean looking fluid. If it's contaminated, that's definitely going to need to be flushed out. So whether we're topping it off, flushing it out, you're going to want to use the recommended brake fluid. So if it's .3, .4, and also you don't want to be mixing those. So you're not going to use .3 and then top it off with something else. Always keep it consistent. Now, aside from that, we're going to want to look for mounting points and make sure everything's nice and tight. Banjo bolts, we don't want to see any leakage there. Now, as we go down to the bottom here, where all the braking actually happens, we're going to look for our calipers and our rotors. The calipers, you want to make sure are bolted on nice and tight. We don't want these things coming off. Again, inspect for any kind of leakage here at the connection points, and this is where you'll be bleeding your brakes if you need to. If you have a really mushy feel at the lever, you probably have to bleed them out, follow directions in your owner's manual. Also, another thing to consider are the rotors. You want to make sure there's no discoloration, which would indicate that they got overheated at some point. You want to make sure that they're not warped, so if you can spin your wheel and see that they're nice and true, that's good. Also, brake pads are something to consider. You want to make sure there's enough meat on your pads so that it's going to be able to last you throughout your riding season. Always err on the side of caution. If they look a little wimpy, go ahead and replace them. They're a cheap part. Now, some bikes don't use hydraulic systems all the way. So if you have a cabled brake system, make sure the cables are in good repair, lube them up, make sure they're clean, and make sure there's no damage to them. Also, if the brakes are working, we're going to want to make sure other people know that. So check your brake lights while you're at it, and that completes pretty much your entire braking package. Riding our motorcycles is all about putting power to the ground, and that's accomplished with the drive system. Three basic types include shaft drive, belt drive, and chain drive. Now, shaft drives are typically the least labor intensive. Very easy to maintain. Check the fluid levels on those and replace if you need to. Also, make sure to grease all the fittings that you can get your hands on. As we go to the belt drive systems, those are much easier to work with. You're going to clean it first. Then inspect it, see if there's any abnormal wear. If the teeth are chunking off, if you have any cracks or cuts, it needs to be replaced. Once you deem that it's all right, adjust the tension on it accordingly, and you're ready to go. Now the chain systems, which is obviously what you'll find on dirt bikes, very popular for street bikes as well, these take a little bit more regular maintenance. So first thing you want to do is clean it so you can get a good look at it. Then you're going to inspect it for abnormal wear. One of the areas to definitely watch for is the master link. It's a couple dollars for a new one, so if you have any doubts about it, just replace it. Also, once that's done, now you're going to look for the tensioning of this. You want to adjust the wheel forward or back depending on what you need, but while you're doing that, it's important to remember that the sprockets need to be in alignment. If they're not, you're going to create abnormal wear, both the sprockets, the chain, but also potentially the engine as well. Now, another important thing about chain care is going to be your sprocket system. You want to make sure that the rear and the front sprockets are in good condition. Aluminum sprockets wear out faster than steel. Your countershaft sprocket is almost always steel, and that's going to be a very long-lasting thing. So look on the front edge of the teeth. If those are all cupped out and worn, that's an indicator that it might need to be replaced. They will start to break and wear off over time. Those definitely need to get swapped out. So once that's all done, the tension's right, you lube them up so that they're going to run smoothly and quietly. Also, don't forget to inspect the guide systems on your bike. So you have these polymer guides that run underneath the chain, typically on top and bottom of the swing arm. And the chain guide on the back here, which is on the sprocket, that needs to be examined as well. If those polymers wear out, now it's metal on metal and you're going to have a problem. So take all good care of that, and your chain should last you for a long time. The engine oil is the lifeblood of a motorcycle, so it's critical to stay on top of. What you're going to want to look for is the quantity and quality. So if your bike has a sight window like this one, check the fill level. Make sure you have enough oil in your machine. Keep in mind you might not have a sight window, maybe use a dipstick. On dirt bikes it's really common to see a small drain plug you have to pull somewhere. So figure out how it is and check the level. Then you're going to want to make sure it's of good quality. This bike's a great example. One, it's very low, but it's also very black, which means it's a dirty oil, it's been contaminated. Time to change it out. So if that's the case, just swap it out and get some fresh stuff in there. Keep in mind, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Either on the motorcycle stamped like this one, you'll see exactly what type and what quantity needs to go back in your bike, or refer to your owner's manual. The filler cap is usually located somewhere in this region, but another thing you're going to want to keep in mind, just as a general rule of thumb, is that if you're changing your oil and it has an oil filter, you're going to want to change that at the same time. It's a good habit to get into. Another thing to keep in mind, you know what type to put in there, but maybe you're not doing a full system. Maybe you're just topping it off. Don't mix synthetic and organic oils. You're going to want to keep those separate. You can use either one, but just don't mix them together. Another thing to remember, some bikes are pretty specific. The oil can be housed up inside the chassis, like in the frame spars. It could have an external oil reservoir, or it could be one of these things where you have a split engine case. So you've got a transmission and an engine oil that are different. Learn your bike, do your research, and then apply it to your motorcycle. Keeping your oil in tip-top shape is crucial. Radiator systems are extremely easy to monitor. Basically just check your fluid level. Pull the cap off, see how much you have in there, make sure you're putting in the right type. The manufacturer is going to tell you what type of fluid needs to go in your machine. It's important to note because sometimes, like dirt bikes, maybe you're on the trail and you get in trouble, you have to dump a little water in. You might want to flush it out and refill it with whatever fluid that you need to have. Now, when you're doing that, look at the cap. Inspect the seals, check that spring, make sure it's okay. The cap will wear out over time eventually. Another thing to consider, the cooling fins need to be as straight as possible. If they're damaged, that's not a good thing. Also look in those radiator cores that are going down between the upper and lower reservoirs. Hoses, all the clamps, check to make sure those are tight. See where it connects into your water pump in the impeller area, make sure that that's clean, and basically just monitor how much fluid is in your system. It's very easy to do. Air filters are one of those areas you don't want to screw up with. Whether it's dirt bikes or street bikes, this is going to affect the long-term health of your engine. So it's important to make sure that you have the right things installed. Now, there's different types of air filters. With dirt bikes, you're going to find foam filters. That's the norm. Now, let's talk about those briefly. These things can be cleaned and reused. As you can see here, this one has reached the end of its lifespan. So it's important to note when you're going through and cleaning these and inspecting them, you want to look for things like where the foam is starting to separate. They use adhesives to keep these different foam pieces together. Make sure that those aren't coming apart. This is a great example of what it might look like. Now, replacing your filter is very easy. My suggestion is to buy at least one spare. So you always have one on hand. You just throw that in and then you go ahead and clean the other one when you have more time. Clean it, re-oil it, make sure you have a proper oil on your filter, and then reinstall it. Now, some of the things to keep in mind when you're doing that is that you should put a small bead of grease around this edge. This is the mating surface. You're going to want to make sure that that's nice and sticky and it's not going to allow anything to sneak in around the back side of the filter. Same thing goes in the airbox. Once you pull the old one out, make sure you clean the airbox out as well. We don't want anything falling down in the boot. Clean it out, make sure that mating surface is very clean in here as well. For street bikes, you're going to be looking at things more like paper filters or cotton filters. Those are very, very common. Paper filters are sort of just like your car. If they're dirty, you might be able to blow them out and reuse them, but basically just toss them and buy a new one and put it in there. If you do have the oiled cottons, like a K&N filter, those can be cleaned with the proper materials, and then you can re-oil them and reuse them just like with your dirt bike. So take good care of them, and it'll take good care of your engine. So as we're talking about these individual components like brakes and tires, that's great, but we're also going to want to take an overall look sort of at the engine compartment and just see how things look in general. So basically what we're checking it out for are leaks, any signs of wear or damage that might have occurred the last time we were riding this bike. Now, obviously with bike with full fairing, it's a little bit harder, but I'm using this as an example because it's pretty good. Down inside, oftentimes you won't see anything under the bike, no visible leaks, but it can get caught up in the fairing. Same thing with dirt bikes, you're going to want to look on the inside of the skid plate. A lot of times oil or radiator fluid or something will actually catch in there, so it's a good indicator. This bike's a really good example also because it's leaking like a sieve. So if you see oil underneath your bike, any kind of fluid, that's an obvious sign that something is wrong. But this is where you're going to want to go around, check all your nuts and bolts that you can get access to with the T-handle, just tighten things up and make sure it looks pretty clean. Another thing to watch out for are the spark plugs. So you're going to want to check the wires and the caps. Pull them off, clean them if you need to, inspect them, make sure they're in good working order. Basically, it's just sort of a general overview. Look around for any visible signs and make sure that everything's nice and tight before you go riding. There's nothing worse than turning your key on and having nothing happen. We need to have healthy batteries in order to get moving. They power our accessories, they power our starters. So, pre-ride, before we even get out for the first time in the season, we're going to make sure our battery's okay. Get the seat off, take a look at it. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want it rattling around, so if there's any kind of a strap or a mechanism to hold it in place, make sure that's good and secure. Also, you want to look at the terminals themselves where the cables connect. Let's make sure those are clean. Also, tighten them down. If they have wiggled loose over time, that'll create a faulty connection. They usually have covers. This is a good example. It's got a red and a black for your positive and negative. Make sure that there's nothing built up under there and make sure that those are in place and covering it so that water and other debris don't collect on top of your battery. Now, if you need to charge it, you can do it a couple different ways. Typically, they can be recharged or trickle charged. Use something like a battery tender or the Motostance MS1000. We have plenty of those availabilities at motorcyclesuperstore.com. Also, batteries are a great option to upgrade. If it's dead, you want to replace it. Lead acid batteries are fine, but they are very heavy. You can actually shave significant amounts of weight with a lithium-ion battery. So look for all those options at Motorcycle Superstore. We've got plenty available, and that'll keep you up and running with a good battery life. Now that we've covered most of the major mechanical stuff, we still want to check out all of the switch gear on our handlebars. Make sure that all these little odds and ends work. That includes your key, obviously, but your kill switch needs to work properly so that you can shut the motor off when you need to. Also, your horn, your lights, your blinkers, your emergency signals. Let's make sure all of that works. You're going to check it here. You're also going to check the lights themselves to make sure that those are indicating properly. Now, dirt bikes don't really have switch gear unless you're talking about dual sports. However, all motorcycles have controls. So while we're up here in the handlebar area, let's adjust the handlebars if we need to. If your grips need to be replaced, that's another thing to consider. Also, your lever placement. So dial all that stuff in, get this control area working properly because this is your main interface with the bike. Once that's done, you're pretty close to being finished up and your bike should be in pretty good order. So that's a very basic, high-level overview on some of the things you should be watching for before you take your bike out this season and start riding it. Now, honestly, you should be able to check over all these things we've mentioned in about 20 minutes or so. If all of those require work, it's going to take you a little bit longer, but you can at least get through the garage, take a look at things, and know where you stand. So, happy riding to you this season. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear some feedback on this video. Leave us some tips. Leave some comments down below. You can tell us what works, what doesn't, your favorite way to bleed some brakes, whatever it might be. And keep in mind, there's plenty more to do for regular maintenance as well. We didn't talk about suspension setup, any of that stuff. So, this is your starting point. I hope it works out well for you. We'll see you next time at Motorcycle Superstore.